Welcome back for the Weekend Research Project. I'm Robert Gadomski. I'm here with my colleague, as always, John Shear. When we last left you, John was making a very valid point on education and how as technology grows and how as an economy grows, the levels of education that people need to work and run those parts of the economy get larger, deeper. You need to get a master's, you need to get a bachelor's, you need to get... And, as a conservative, I don't disagree with you. What I disagree with is who it should be on the backs of. We started this whole argument because we're saying why women, Hispanics, African Americans flock towards the Democratic Party so much, and you said education. And I don't think that, I think education's a right. You should obviously have a right. We live in a free society where you should have the right to study whatever you want. You can go to Queens College and get a master's in sociology. You can go any American university, you can go to liberal university, you can go, wherever you want. I think it's the right of who it should be paid for. And I think I think the reason the student loan bubble is something that we're going to debate in the future, because when that bursts, the economy could be screwed. But the reason there is a bubble is, number one, the recession that we were just in. So many people going back to school figure they'll take out a loan. That money won't be nearly worth as much when the dollar inflates within a couple of years, hyperinflation. And another reason is because it's like politicians, so you kick it down the road. You can't find a job now. So instead of maybe going a different route, instead of maybe getting a $7 an hour job, maybe a $10 an hour job, maybe you're washing floors at a casino. That's not the life you envision for yourself. You take out a student loan, $13,000 in student loan debt, and you kick the can down the road. And then, in a couple years, you have a bachelor's and you're not special anymore. Everyone has a bachelor's. So it's not as easy to get that job you wanted.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the high-tech jobs of the future. We need to, the problem is the Republicans come off as saying, like I've said on the show before, Paul Ryan says, we don't guarantee equal outcomes, but we guarantee equal opportunity. But you can't say that somebody who's born in a poor minority community has the same ability to achieve what somebody who's born in a wealthy suburban community. If
you're a big donor to the Harvard and the Yale law schools, and you have various dormitories named after you,
well, not even
and
that.
You donate 5 to 10,000 blocks for the new cafeteria, you may have a better chance, no matter what your GPA was.
But not even that. Somebody who's born, for example, upper middle class, in a community on Long Island, for example, they have necessarily more opportunities than somebody who's born in a poor inner city area. So the Republican Party, look, if you want to talk about how we don't agree with welfare, we don't agree with all these programs.
No one is stating that we don't agree with welfare. What we don't agree with is that
let's be honest. A lot of times they try to paint Democrats as being, like Mitt Romney recently said, he gave gifts to minority communities. That's the whole mentality, that you give gifts, but you can't rail against providing benefits to people when you're not in favor of programs that help to spread, to allow for equal opportunities. I mean, the Republican Party over the years has opposed busing. They've opposed affirmative action. They've opposed,
what about the school voucher system in Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago that John Boehner set up?
School vouchers are good, but they don't help everybody.
But they help African American communities in the Washington, D.C. area. Those aren't white kids who are getting a better education. That was African American communities. Also, more Democrats voted against the Civil Rights Act of 1964 than Republicans. So I don't know how that.
Yeah, but this is why I think the Republican Party has lost in a sense, because it's true that Democrats were the party that opposed civil rights. They were the party that was in the wrong since the Civil War on race relations in this country. But you have 1964. We have the passage of the Civil Rights Act. That's when President Johnson said, we've lost the South. And sure enough, what happened? Well, look at the 1964 election. After that, we had Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater won Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina. He won 3 or 4 states that had never been held by Republicans since Reconstruction. So what happened was the Republican Party moved in and appealed to disgruntled white voters in the South. And it played to that. If you look at it, you see those areas in the South went from Democrat to Dixiecrat to Republican. And now the Republican is solid Republican territory, and largely because of the Southernization of the Republican Party. You know, they went into the South and they thought they would build a winning combination there. But if you look at the electoral cycles, it worked for them for a while. But the only time they lost the presidency was when you had a Southerner running. They lost
Bill Clinton in 1996.
Carter and Clinton.
From Georgia. Okay.
So they tried to build the party by appealing to these Southerners, but now.
Now, how do you say it's appealing to Southerners? You sound like it's, you know, let's appeal to the racism of those people there, you know.
Well, I think that, well, judging by some of the positions that they took, I mean, Barry Goldwater repudiated his civil rights stance, and then he won those states. It was a Southern, what they call the Southern strategy. And then you have abortion, gay marriage, evolution.
Well, listen, we speak about this all the time, and we say that, you know, liberals speak like, you know, if you're not in favor of abortion, if you're pro-life, that you're somehow a scary human being. I will be the first one to say again and again, there's people who ran for Senate in Indiana and Missouri that I never want to hear speak again. Liberals would like to, of course, because it is comedic. But, you know, if you're pro-life, that means you feel that abortion is murder, and that's an opinion. That's a worthwhile opinion. That's almost the same opinion as saying that, you know, raising taxes on the rich is a healthy ingredient for a healthy economy. You know.
No, I agree. I agree with that too. And I think in Murdoch's case, the Democrat was also pro-life. So we do have pro-life in the Democratic Party.
Harry Reid is pro-life.
It's muted, but it's there. But when you look at every other policy, I mean, evolution. There are some
Republicans who have not believed in evolution.
Well, not some. In some states, the Republican can't even admit that he believes in evolution. It's an ad. It was a
again, not a national party issue.
But I'm saying it's hindering the Republican Party.
We also state this all the time, that there are candidates across the country on both sides of the political spectrum who have beliefs that aren't normal, too far to that political spectrum.
Yeah, but when you look at the Republican Party now, what they've done is, it used to be moderate Republicans. Their base area was the Northeast. You had Nelson, you know, this is Nelson Rockefeller. These are, you know, people that came from, that's where the Republican Party was based since the time of abolition. Then, as the party went south, it ran further and further to the right on all these social issues. You know, to the point where now, maybe it's not killing them nationally as much. I mean, well, actually, there are effects of it. But when you look at in the presidential context, the South is locked up, but it's made the South irrelevant now because the Democrats have built, have built a coalition around them. That the Southern vote no longer matters. The Southern vote was seen as the key. The Southern white vote was seen as the key to Republicans winning presidency.
Which obviously wouldn't matter anymore because of the population fluctuations and how white people aren't a majority anymore when looked at as a whole, and the rising Hispanic and African American populations. Listen, when you say that Republicans do not have a winning combination anymore, that demographic changes and shifts mean that the party of the elephant will go extinct in the next couple of years. Let's just look at a couple certain facts, okay? Mitt Romney and John McCain were both moderate Republicans. Whether Mitt Romney's voice was overshadowed by far-right critics across the country, Mitt Romney won a campaign against guys such as Rick Santorum, Rick Perry, Michelle Bachmann. These aren't moderate Republicans. Mitt Romney was the most moderate Republican in that field. You almost can't get more moderate than Mitt Romney. John McCain was a moderate Republican. By the way, John McCain got smashed. He didn't even belong in the race.
But the point is the moderate. Yeah,
and also another point I was making. You can make a case that Ohio was won because of the genius of one David Axelrod, because they kept open so many get-out-the-vote centers across the country in Ohio that it helped a lot. And he only won by a few percentage points in Ohio, Barack Obama. And a lot of that was from the infrastructure, the campaign infrastructure that was put in place in 2008. So to say that, you know, it's what happens after a campaign. We all like to say things like the party's going to be extinct, they need to change their views, they need to change their core values.
Well,
I mean,
I'm not saying it'll be extinct, but when you look at it, okay, for this election, yes, it's slight. But if you look at others, if that trend continues, the party is going to be in some serious trouble. The demographic shift. I mean, he lost young voters, Romney. he lost, which
Due
is
to social
regulated
media.
fiction.
Barack Obama spent more money on social media than Republicans.
But let's be honest, young people are more socially liberal to begin with. In general. So he lost to the young people.
Let's also say the younger generation out of college is at like 3% unemployment rate. They're not really the ones suffering.
Well, that's not I guess it depends where you hear that figure, because I've heard it from more conservative think tanks that have said that the unemployment rate among young people is higher than the average, which I tend to agree with, because more people are living at home. That's a good indication. But you lost young people, you lost women, you lost minorities. I mean, Hispanics voted for Bush for most of the time.
And why? And why are Hispanics voting for Bush? David asked this question a week ago, and we're going to have a columnist, Ryan James Gadomski, on next week, and we're going to speak about race and politics. We're going to have maybe a broader discussion. But I look at this race, and I look at the numbers of African Americans voting between 93 and 95% for Barack Obama. Hispanics, Mitt Romney lost by
7-1.
7-1. Why? How has your life gotten better in the 4 years since Barack Obama took office? Besides stating the fact that maybe we were on the cliff and Barack Obama was the one who took us off that cliff, I think John McCain might have done the same thing. I think the economy would have healed itself in the beginning, no matter who won. But, like if you're an African American, how did your life get better in 4 years because of Barack Obama?
But it's not about whether or not it got better.
But that's what a re-election should. But that's what a re-election should be about. When you run for re-election, as a voter, you have to ask yourself, am I better off than I was 4 years ago? And yes, the economy was on the precipice of a deep depression.
You have to ask yourself, will you be better off in 4 years under this person's policy? That's the second question. I mean, and you look at it, if you're an African American or Hispanic, which by the way we would love to have we would love to have a perspective on that take from somebody who actually might know.
It's an African American. We've invited plenty of people who haven't came on, so that's,
but if I'm an African American or Hispanic, and there's and you have the Republican Party, which you had Rand Paul who recently said in the 2010 election he didn't think the Civil Rights Act was constitutional.
Rand Paul wasn't on the ballot in this election. But it's also worthwhile to note that Rand Paul said that he didn't know whether it violated the Constitution or not, whether
but he was questioning.
But whether the government had the right to go into a restaurant in Kentucky and say who you have to serve or not, whether the government has a right to go into private entity. It sounds really nice.
If you're an African American, you're going to be concerned about that.
Okay, Rand Paul also was on the ballot.
Okay, he wasn't. But I'm just saying, if you look at the party in total, you look at it. It's a party that years ago opposed busing, a party that opposes affirmative action, a party that opposes investment in education and job training for people. A party that constantly says we want to let you go, we want to give you freedom to. I'm sorry. Let me clarify that. A party that has the fallacy that everybody starts in the exact same place.
No one has that fallacy.
Well, I think they do, because they make it look like if we got rid of welfare, people would get jobs.
No one said get rid of welfare. What people are saying is look into welfare more and be more stringent on it. This way you're not online with someone who has one bill on welfare and the rest of the beer and the Oreos on cash as they have their Rolex on.
But they demonize poor people.
We're going to have to cut this discussion really short. I will just say one thing about affirmative action, that as a conservative, I agree that years ago you need to get people, African Americans and Hispanics, into schools and whatnot. What I don't believe in is taking people who, let's say you have 100 people, you want to have 33 Hispanics, 33 African Americans, 33 white people.
That's not what it does. Affirmative action is about, what it does is, you can't set quotas, that's unconstitutional. It's actually where all it says is you can take race into account. So in other words, if you play the violin, that gets taken into account. But because it recognizes that because of disparities in race, some groups don't have as many opportunities, so they count that the same way they would.
What it also does is by putting, by giving maybe extra points towards people who are minorities, who didn't have the chances years ago to get into school. What you're also doing is subtracting for people and inhibiting them from going to those schools for no reason whatsoever. And we're going to get into this discussion next week, and we're going to have Ryan James Gadomski in next week to be on our show, And from all of us at the Weekend Research Project, Robert Gadomski and John Shear, we'd like to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving, and we thank you for joining us this week.